Damage, and it's brought to you by Absolute Tabletop. If you want to support these live streams and if you want to get some awesome RPG products, you can do that at absolutetabletop.com. All the questions that I field are from our official Facebook group. It's the Absolute Tabletop Facebook group, and we encourage you to go and join. So today I'm going to be answering a few questions, but first I want to talk about something that is upcoming. You're going to be seeing some information on here soon. We have a convention every year. It's an annual convention called AtCon, and AtCon is going to be in June this year in Tacoma, Washington, and we invite you to come and hang out with us. It's a 3-day convention, and more information, especially like ticket sales, is going to be announced probably later this week. We hope by Friday or Saturday. Also, if you are interested in getting more information, the pinned post in our Facebook group right now is the venues and other information about AtCon. So I recommend you go and jump in and do that. So we have some community questions, but the first thing I want to do is thank everyone for jumping in. Thank you all for spending time walking around, and this is one of my favorite parts of the day. So it's just awesome. It's really, really fun to talk about RPGs and hang out. So just thank you. Hey, Peter's here. What's up, man? What you looking at is here. Jonah Weatherby is here. How's everybody doing today? Hopefully it's a good Wednesday. I'm just feeling really great. It's gorgeous out here. The weather is, it feels like it's maybe 69, 70 degrees, and it's nice and breezy. It's a little gray, but sunny as well. Michael Maitland says, woohoo, AtCon. So let's talk about a question from the group. I usually print out a little notepad here. Oh, that's my Monty Python Tim the Enchanter shirt. The first one is from Chris Villanueva. And Chris is basically saying, hey, listen, I'm sure that this is something that's been discussed before, but he's looking to adapt a new method of tracking his ideas for D&D digitally. And so basically he's looking for something that's cross-platform, mobile, so those are two requirements, and then easy to organize and use, and he's not super tech savvy. So that's a really good question, and a lot of people commented with a comment that is my same sentiment, which is Google Docs. But I want to dig a little deeper into that. Hey, let's see here. Dylan Allen says, Daily Damage, I missed these. You know, I missed them too. Jeff Doty is here, and he says, is there any hype greater than AtCon on the horizon? I'm not sure there is. You know, man, I'm not sure there is either. Let's see here. Dominic Ruiz, I'm playing a druid right now. Any tips on Circle of the Land? I will get to that. So, remind me though. Chris, my main piece of advice is you have to think of what kind of system you're actually going to use and how you're going to use it. Sometimes it's super, super easy to come up with a process without understanding how the process is going to be used. And while that sounds very basic, I have seen the same thing with organizing things for clients, where they get so into the process that sometimes what they're going to use the process for is not considered. And so I don't know you personally enough to know how you prep, to know what your habits are and all those kinds of things, but you need to figure out a process that's something that you're going to be able to use. And so specifically, what do I mean? Well, I mean, I can come up with the coolest Google Drive solution for you, but if you have a certain habit, or if you have a way that you put information in your phone, or a way that you think, it is going to fail for you. So I think at the core, you need to be self-reflective and think, all right, when do I need to put these notes in? How often do I do it? And, you know, what amount of time do I want to spend? And so that's really the key. You have to figure that out first. And I know that that's probably not the exact answer you're looking for, but you have to figure out your habits. Do you prep on the toilet? Do you, like, what do you need to be able to do? Because if you set yourself up for success, that is how you make a process that works for you. I could recommend a process, but unless I knew more about that, I can't. I actually have to tie my shoes, so bear with me. Let's see here. Michael M. Tim the Enchanter quote. So, brave knights, if you doubt your courage or strength, come no further, for death awaits you all with nasty, big pointy teeth. Let's hear. Trump, my love. Voted for Trump. I put Donald Trump in the White House, and I'll do it over again in 2020. Sounds great. What's your favorite D&D character? Let's see. Peter Deek. Digital idea tracking, notepad app. Michael Barker. Diss my guy. Diss my guy too. Michael Barker, I hope you feel better, bro. I know you weren't feeling well. Chris, I want to give you a more specific process that you can use. This is what works for me. This is what I've slowly moved to. Have a notepad app on your phone. If you have a smartphone, most people do. Have a notepad app on your phone. I recommend that you back it up to the cloud automatically. There are a lot of options for that. For me, that is the first container, is my notepad on my phone. Because I can pull it out, I can voice message it, I can do all that. So the funnel begins at the widest point on my phone. I go ahead, I put the notes in there, okay? From there, I take those notes, probably for me, I do this like once a week, and I email them to myself, okay? Now you might think, well, why do you do that? Just because that's how my brain works. That's what I was alluding to before, which is, this is what makes sense to me. It's what I can stick to. So I then email that. From the email, I copy and paste it into the parts of the Google Drive that it belongs, okay? So, for like working on a Dead Man's Guide to Dragon Grin, if I have an idea that's like, I think that the Drogas should be crime lords, and I think that they should do pit fighting, I'll put that into my notepad. Then, at the end of the week, I'll go through and I'll email that whole notepad file to myself. And it'll have all sorts of stuff in there, because the first phase isn't about organization, it's just about gathering, it's collection. The second phase, I email that to myself, and then when I check that email address, I go through the process of now, okay, I take this Drogas piece and I put it in the Drogas doc. I take this piece, I put it here. That also allows me, if I'm inspired, to put other notes that I might think of as I'm entering it into the Google Doc. I highly recommend you absolutely do not use a bunch of folders to start with. Organization is crippling. Use it as a tool, don't use it as a starting point. Okay, most people start by saying, well, how am I going to invent this 20 folder system? And this is the world, and this is the region, and in the region are the cities. And what you're doing is you're creating a process and then trying to match your creativity and your actual functioning methods to the process. I highly recommend just have one doc to start with. And there's this really, really, really cool feature in Google Docs that I'm going to tell you about that is a lifesaver. If you use in the menu bar, you can make things, titles and things like that. Sorry, I'm missing these comments. Let's see here. Barker says, feels bad, man, but these streams always invigorate me. He says, I'm a Google Docs guy, but I've heard great things about World Anvil. It's very detailed. That's what I don't want detail. For me personally, I want super simple, because I can get lost making a wiki. And as cool as that is, it's not as practical for me. And so I'm not downing World Anvil, and I want to check it out before I said no, but sorry, I had to jump to reading the comments, because if not, they go away. Prooper says, I have a train wreck of a notebook. I will never use a notebook again because I lost one and I don't want to feel that pain again. Same thing with a hard drive. That's why I'm a cloud jockey now. Peter says, World Anvil is great, a bit overcomplicated at times, but a good place to start developing your ideas. That would be my concern. And then he says, yeah, let's see here. Google Docs and OneNote is what Lee Wilton Gilbert says. He likes that you can have linked pages in OneNote. Here's the thing. Let me get back to what I was going to say about Google Docs. I would recommend highly starting with one document. Start with one doc, okay? And then what you can do, up in the top left-hand corner, they have headings. And so there's title, and then heading, I think it's like 5 different headings. What you can then do is insert a table of contents. What the table of contents does at the beginning of the document, it automatically will link all of the headings. So you can now have a table of contents for your ideas. So if you make the heading plot lines and you make another heading NPCs, you could have one big doc until you need to break it into smaller docs and then jump around using that the table of contents. That has saved me a ton of time. It's how we've written big swaths of the book, like something as huge as backgrounds. We've done Google Docs, and then I will just make each one of the titles of the backgrounds, which there were like 25 backgrounds for Dragon Grin at one point. So I made them all a table of contents. Hopefully that helps. Let's see here. All right, Time More says, I've been rocking a Word doc for 3 years, about 250 pages. So that is awesome. So to me, what a Word doc is, it is absolutely putting it into the cloud. That's all that is. So I would, if I were you, Ty, I would Control A, Control C, and I would Control V that into a Google Doc, because what you can also do is access it anywhere. Now you might use Office 365, but that's what I found to be amazing, is that Google Docs is everywhere. Michael Bacher says, docs, Word docs, spiral notebooks, leather-bound journals, small notepads, index cards, guest check pads, dry erase boards, voice recorders. I have so many sources everywhere because I need to have something like that near me in case I get an idea. Not the most easily organized, but it's what I need, and that's it. You got to use what you need. You got to use what you need, and that's the key. Is if, like, I know, okay, our good friend Runehammer, he uses DM notebooks. I've seen, as Barker said, I've seen Barker write entire books in small leather-bound sort of like handcrafted notebooks and then transfer them to a Google Doc. James Patterson, one of the best-selling authors in history, writes all of his novels out longhand. So does Stephen King. Now they have the luxury of having someone retype it for them, but that's how their creative process works. I even have heard Neil Gaiman say that he writes things out longhand on purpose for certain stories because his mind works differently that way. So anyway, whatever works. I think that's beautiful. Matt, let's see here. Michael M says you can also create links in Google Docs and include them in other docs. Exactly. And we do that quite a bit in AppTab. Jeff says, really interesting idea on creating a process versus actually using it. I think it's something that's gotten me before without ever realizing that was the problem. I'll have to reflect on that. Yeah, Jeff, it's like world builder's disease for process creators, where I love creating processes, but sometimes it's the process doesn't match the job. So anyway, yeah, cool. I'm glad that helps. What you're looking at says, like to tattoo my ideas. He's a memento sort of fellow. Jonah Weatherby, when's the next Provokers? The next Provokers is, I believe it's April 17th. This was sort of a busy month for everybody with other commitments and family and things. So I think second or third week in April. Yep. And Dylan Allen says third Wednesday of every month. It is usually. We actually are foregoing this month. It would have been tonight. Let's see here. Oh, okay. Dominic's Ruiz, any tips on the Circle of the Land Druid? And you are absolutely not interrupting me. Totally. I don't have any tips, and I'm sorry. I think the reason why I say that is because I don't even remember exactly which one the Circle of the Land Druid is, and that's just being very real. But I will say this. I can give you some general tips while I tie my other shoe, which came untied. Hi, everybody. Some tips as a player, and this would apply to your Circle of the Land Druid. When you're starting out, whatever spells you choose, it's a great idea to get familiar with them, read over them, and just know a little bit about them. In general, you do not have to memorize them, but you should not be reading your spells for the first time. You shouldn't be reading your abilities for the first time at the table. So that would be my advice. And I think something else, there are a couple of forums. If you type in best Circle of the Land Druid options, I think it's the EN World forums, so capital E, capital N World. And they'll rate all of the powers and abilities by colors, where like gold is the best in their opinion and like black is the worst or something. I would recommend that. And they do the same thing for spells, but I think that just good, useful information is read through what the ability does for whatever you have. And again, it's not about memorization, it's about familiarization, so that you have high-level ideas, so that when a scenario arises or when a problem happens at the table, you are not now looking to see, oh, well, what do I have that could maybe work? You're thinking, oh, I wonder if that crazy spell, I wonder if that will work. Now let me look it up. So you're basically going one level in of familiarization. That would be my recommendation. So hopefully that makes sense and is useful. Next question is Josh Glisson. What you looking at? Says, if your big bad evil guy or your main villain was transported to another campaign world or system and had to live by the rules of this new system, so no magic, low magic, etc., would they still be formidable and scary? In the realm of Dragongrin, we have a villain named the Dismembered Lord, and he gains a lot of his powers from the realm of Dragongrin and this magical maelstrom called the Bleak. That said, I think he would be less powerful, but I don't think he would be any less cunning. And I think someone's true danger is not always in the power that they wield, but it's in their mindset, it's in their ability to persist, it's in their, basically, their cunning. And I think the Dismembered Lord is an extremely cunning character, and I feel like he would carry some of the power of the Bleak over with him. So let's use some of our own campaign worlds. I think if the Dismembered Lord went to Enkea, I think he would be more powerful, because Enkea is such a high magic world. It is the highest magic. Think of it this way. It's the opposite of a low fantasy world. Magic is so prevalent that I think he could harness that in a way that would be extremely deadly. I also feel like he would play the factions against each other. But yeah, that's a great question. I think, though, if the Dismembered Lord was on like Kror, Kror is one of our side worlds. It's on one of the moons of Arbitron. It's this blasted sort of red desert. I think if he was on Kror, he would eventually become a warlord of some sort, rallying people to his cause and so on. So that's actually a really, really good question. But I think if he was in a low fantasy setting, I think he would still have the cunning necessary without his magic, if he could survive, to still find a way to gain power. But that, I think, is a really good question. Alan says, in my Google Drive, it has folders based on game systems and or themes, fantasy, sci-fi. And when those folders are there, in there are docs folders and other inspirational materials for me to go back and forth when I have time. That's great, Alan. And one of the things that's really awesome about Google Drive that I didn't mention is because it's Google, it's extremely searchable. So you can have, you ever have that problem where you're looking for that idea you had, say 6 months ago, and you remember it had something to do, like Alan, with your post about werewolves yesterday. In 6 months, if you're trying to find that post, You can just type in werewolf, or even just some weird, you know, you're like, oh, it was something about veterinary science, and you can just type that in and Google will help you find the idea, and that is super helpful as well. Let's see here. Peter Doak, or go old school and use a pin board. I would use that as a spot solution to then get my stuff into the cloud. I am all about reusing and having things to cut and paste, and you know, but yeah, I think that you're right though. Having a pin board gives you a different kind of creative process than not. There are some things that I still will write on pen and paper just because I feel like it. And so yeah, I think that the true value is don't let your method stop you or slow you down. No matter what you're using, don't stop because you can't find the right method, I guess is the tip that is at the bottom of it all. Michael Barker says, the Dismembered Lord is also exceptional at dividing and conquering. He would absolutely be a contender to dominate NKF. Whew, that's awesome. Cannon. No, I'm not. Paul Bills. Time Moore says, I find cunning hard to roleplay because I can't separate what I know as a DM from what the BBG knows. So just as long as you're fair, the BBG knows everything you do. Because that makes a good story. I know that's probably cheap, but I hear you. I hear what you're saying. I think here would be the middle ground. Cunning is you as a game master coming up with a reasonable way that's believable for the BBG to find out. That's what you're allowed to do. You're allowed to concoct and craft ways, well, this could happen unless they stop it. And that is the best way to play cunning, which is think of something the players would never think of. And if they don't stop it from happening, well, now he knows. And I feel like that's a good kind of fair middle ground. Final question is from Zachary Naragon. And this is less of a question, and it's more of something he just said. And I think it's extremely valuable, and that's why I'm going to mention it. He said his home game was getting dry, and he was running out of ideas and had no clue to do with the game. So, and this is the key. Last week, I admitted this to my table and told them I can eventually figure something out. We could go back to a previous game that fell apart, or we could try a different idea for a setting he had that's heavily based on our latest book, Adventure Kit: Shadows over Driftchapel. The reason why I think this is so important is because so often as game masters, we do not take this step. This step is being real with your players and saying, this game is getting dry to me and I am out of ideas. I'm sure there are plenty of campaigns that could have been saved if the game master would have just said that to the group. That's okay. It is not your responsibility as the game master to make it go forever. And sometimes open communication where you just go, hey, this is feeling a little dry. How are you all feeling? You know, and just let them talk to you. And so he mentions that. He says, basically, this is an important lesson. If you're burnt out as a DM on a current story or your heart's not in it, there are options. Just maybe even ask one of the other players if they're interested in running something. Or you can always put it up to a vote to change the game. Basically, just be real with yourself. Now, there's a balance. If this happens every 1 game, 2 games you run, you'll get a reputation for being flaky, and you don't want that. But if you feel that the story's run a good course, you feel like there's an arc that's been accomplished, or the story's kind of done, at least this chapter of it, it is totally okay to put it down and try something else. In Absolute Tabletop, we call that ginger between sushi. Sometimes you just need to cleanse the palate, because it could be that you just need a trilogy of Mecha Hack, and it reinvigorates you to come back to Dragon Grin and run the game you've always wanted to run. Let's see here. What you're looking at says, one thing I do with Google Docs is I use a program called IFTTT to automatically paste tweets from a random RPG idea Twitter into a doc. That's kind of cool. That way you can go in and just be surprised. Michael Barker says, try thinking of an ability or a feature to define how they're cunning. and less related to meta knowledge. Ooh, that's brilliant. Maybe even have people everywhere, or they can see things before they happen, and therefore they're always one step ahead of the players. Bang on. I totally agree with that. Peter says, well, it depends on how evil is defined in the world setting. Yes. But, well, yeah, I guess that does make sense. It does depend on how evil is defined. Yeah, you're right. I agree. Hey, Paul Quattracciacci. What's going on, man? Jeff Doty says, that's part of why I prefer a bounded campaign over indefinite. Not setting a hard session limit, but deciding on a conscious endpoint to the game and not allowing it to continue past that scope. That's so smart. And the more that I play, the more I realize that I love the idea of playing forever, in the same way that I love the idea of going out to dinner with my family every night, you know. But there's a balance that you have to strike, and I think going in with the concept of, we want to tell this one story. It can be really difficult. Honestly, it can be difficult to end these streams sometimes, but I've tried to keep them leaner rather than, because I love it. I love talking to all of you. I love walking. And so it's easy to just go, well, I don't want this feeling to end, but it's healthier for everyone. Well, maybe not thought of walking, but it's overall, I find that it makes it so that I'm more recharged and ready to do it again tomorrow. And in the same way, you know, spanning that out to a game level, you want to play again and reimagine and come up with a new world. So one final thing that I want to tell everybody, and this is it's a bit of an experiment, so this first one is going to be interesting, but I think it's going to be awesome. And I made a post in the Absolute Tabletop official group. It's AbTab Create. And so this weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, it's an informal, devoted weekend to creating. What I mean by informal is, it's mostly going to be just about putting your mind to it. Devoted time where you're going to do these things. There will be a couple of hosted events by Barker and myself. Probably these sorts of streams. I know we'll also do some stuff in the Discord as well. Probably some posts in the group. But the way to participate is just to participate. It's set yourself sometime this weekend to sit down and try to get over that creative hump that you've been trying to get over, whatever that is. It can be different for everyone. But you've been trying to figure out that villain. This is the perfect weekend to do it. Why? Because sometimes dedicated effort is all it needs. Sometimes you just need to buckle down and say, this weekend is the weekend I figure it out. And so I think overall, like I said, the way to participate is just put the hashtag AbTabCreate into whatever it is you're doing. And that just says you're participating. Like I said, we will probably do some devoted stuff, but really, if this works out and it seems to go well, we'll probably try to do this maybe like once a month, because sometimes you just need it on the calendar. Hey, a group of people are also going to be working. I'm going to take some of that kinetic energy. I'm going to be inspired, and I'm going to maybe dip into a little bit of accountability. So that'll be this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and hope everybody joins us. Jeff says, that way, okay. The next comment Jeff made after the scope of the campaign being decided beforehand was, that way you can see an idea through and not flake, but still know you don't have to run the hamster wheel forever. Jeff, that is an amazing visual of how campaigns can feel sometimes. It's the hamster wheel. That's awesome. Jose Soto, how's it going, everyone? It's going much better now that you're here and now that everybody else is here. Michael Barker, much excitement to create with the group this weekend. Yeah, man, it's going to be awesome. I think this will be fun to explore, and, you know, it'll get better as we do it. Progress over perfection, as you know, I'm a huge fan of. So let this be an example. Instead of figuring it all out and waiting until next month to try this creative weekend, nah, let's just do one. Let's do one. Let's get some cool stuff done. And then we'll fix something if it needs to be fixed. Let's say here, Jonathan Inc. says, all hail the group think. Man, there's just something about being able to post something with the hashtag, this is AppTabCreate, because it immediately adds this layer that I'm part of something, I'm doing something. And I think that that can be extremely motivating. Last couple comments. Jeff Doty says, love the idea of AppTabCreate. Super into it, and I'll definitely make an effort to get myself going into the group accountability. It can be great for, you know, where self-motivation can sometimes be difficult. I totally agree. And then we got Lee Wilton Gilbert says, I would say the two most important steps to creation and producing something is to, one, write things down when inspiration strikes, and two, treat it like a job or something important. Schedule your time to create and practice making the documents, notes, and games that you want to make, and the adventures and stuff if you're into that too. I think those are super, super good tips. And I think you're right that sometimes just making it happen. Writing it down is a huge step. Even if it is a note that is 2 sentences. One of the things I love about video is that if you go and watch yesterday's stream, we brainstormed about 2 orcish saints. I would never remember that today, but I can go back and watch that video and go, oh, hey, here you go. So there's also value. Start a YouTube channel, make it private. You never have to show another soul, and just ramble and walk like I'm doing, you know? So anyway, I just want to let everybody know, hope you're having a fantastic day. I think overall, this has been a great stream. I can't wait to see what you create. So let it be written. So let it be done. This is Tabletop Terrors. May you mend the first break. May you kill the first snake. And may you conquer everything you undertake. Sláinte.